And also, by the way, before we beginning, I want to introduce our host today, Renee. She will give us like a fantastic workshop for us to see how we can do and relax during this virtual study and with the virtual like Zoom burnout stuff. And I will give the time to Renee.
Thank you so much, Bruce. Hi, everyone. My name is Renee Delacqua, and I am a health educator as well as a certified health coach here at UC San Diego in the Health Promotion Services Department. So before we begin this workshop, which will, as the title shows, will be all about resilience and ways in which we can strengthen it, I first want to acknowledge the fact that 2020 has been such a difficult, emotionally draining, and just overall taxing year. And so I want to acknowledge the fact that you all are still here today, conquering each day, really pushing forward despite all the challenges and hardships that you face. So with that, it already should remind you and show you how resilient and strong you already are. And so today's workshop will really be about giving you even additional tools and additional knowledge to build up upon the resilience that you already have, because you have endured so much in your life overall, but especially in 2020. And with that, I also kind of want to get grounded in the present moment right now. I think a lot of us have been experiencing a heightened level of anxiety and uncertainty this week, particularly given the election. And so I kind of just want to take a moment and invite you all to feel the chair behind your back. If you're laying in your bed, to feel the bedding against your body, and gently close your eyes if that's something that feels comfortable to you. Just gently close your eyes and take a slow and steady breath in through your nose. Hold that breath and then exhale. And with the next deep breath in, I invite you all to imagine inhaling hope, love, and compassion. Hold that breath. Let it marinate deep into your body. And as you exhale, exhale anxiety, worry, and fear. So one more time, just take a slow and steady breath in through your nose. Hold that breath. And just breathe out worry, anxiety, and fear. So I hope you all were able to get grounded in the present moment. And now we're going to jump into today's workshop, Resilience in the Making. So first off, we're going to define what is resilience. And the American Psychological Association defines it as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress, such as family and relationship problems, serious health problems, or workplace and financial stressors. So kind of the short and sweet definition of resilience is really the ability to bounce back from adversity and hardship, the ability to keep pushing forward even when you experience challenges along your life's journey. So that's what resilience is all about. So now we're going to transition into what resilience isn't, because sometimes there's some misconceptions when it comes to resilience. So resilience is not the absence of obstacles or challenges. Resilience also is not a personality trait that only some are born with and some are born without. Resilience is really built upon the foundation of hardships and distress. So those who tend to be the most resilient tend to be those who have experienced a lot of challenges in their life, but have continued and have learned how to adapt accordingly to keep pushing forward and to keep along in their life's journey. And we all have the power to strengthen our resilience, but it does take time, it takes effort, and it takes intentionality. Just like most good things in life, it does require a certain level of effort that we put into it. So based on what we just said about what resilience is, the ability to bounce back from hardships and adversity, and what resilience isn't, the absence of obstacles and a personality trait that only some are born with, based on knowing that, can you think of someone in your life who exemplifies resilience? And feel free to either unmute and shout out your answer or use the chat box to provide your response. So again, the question is, based on what we just talked about, can you think of someone who exemplifies resilience? Okay, Oscar said my father. Awesome. Anyone else who, based on the definition of resilience, see, Anthony Davis, my parents. Awesome. So I'm so glad that you all have someone that you can look up to that exemplifies resilience. Because when we have that person that we can emulate or just even see how they are able to conquer each day despite the challenges that they face, that's really awesome for us to see. That's like almost as if we have a role model of resilience in our lives. So thank you so much for that. Okay, so now we're going to transition into talking about what are some of those factors that influence and impact resilience. So hopefully you get an idea. Ooh, I'm not sure if I'm having to. Bruce, are you able to hear me still?
Yeah, I can hear you, Renee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Sierra, I'm not sure. You might be having some technical difficulties right now. Hopefully you can get that resolved. Okay. So, okay, it's probably your computer. No worries at all. It happens. It's a part of being on Zoom. Okay, so I'm going to continue on. So now we're going to be talking about all the different factors that deeply impact resilience. I just want to make a note that there's a lot of factors that impact resilience. I've just kind of picked out some of those key factors that are really represented in the research literature. So the first thing we're going to talk about is character strengths. So we all possess a unique combination of positive personality traits or character strengths that really makes us who we are. It influences how we interact with the world and how we view the people around us and how we interact with them. And so the VIA Institute of Character has identified 24 character strengths that we can possess. And the reason why we're going to talk about character strengths is oftentimes, as human beings, for some reason, we tend to look at our faults. We tend to look at what our weaknesses are and really fixate on those. But when we want to strengthen our resilience, it's really about tapping into what our strengths are and identifying those and utilizing those on a daily basis and just being proud of those things. So I'm going to zoom into this graphic right here. And what I want you to do is I want you to take a moment to look at what these character strengths are. Look through each one of these and identify the ones that you believe are your top strengths and why. And then on the flip side, I've also invite you to look at all of these different character strengths and see which ones aren't currently your strong suit, but you really want to build upon it. So just take a moment to look at that. And then I'd love to hear from a few of you regarding your top strengths and then strengths in which you want to continue working on. And when you're ready, feel free to share. So here are the questions. What is your top strength and why? And then on the flip side, what trait would you like to strengthen and why?
Hello?
So, yes.
Hello?
Hi, Austin.
Oh, hi. Thank you. I just want to make sure I could be heard, but I think judging by those classification of character strengths, one of them that I seem to see is like that really resonates with me is probably like forgiveness. I think it's really easy, or I've grown to get better at forgiving through the years, and I think I'm proud of that. But one that I want to work on, like I want to work on like today, for example, is perseverance and just being able to just finish tasks and
Yeah.
even given like the current situation, so on and so forth.
Thank you so much for sharing, Austin. I think it is absolutely amazing that you've identified your top strength as forgiveness, because that's usually something that people tend to want to work on. So I'm so impressed that that is your top strength, because I think that's something that as human beings, it can be really challenging. So I hope you're so proud of that strength that you possess.
Thank you.
No problem. Would anyone else like to share what they believe is their top strength? And then also on the flip side, what strength they would like to work on?
Well, I think for me, I think I'm like more the string is like for me is top is kindness, because I mean kindness like always standing on other people's shoes to thinking the question. So that is like the thing I think I'm more good at, and I think I need to work on is the judgment. Sometimes I have like a hard time to judge one's stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Bruce. I think in the times that we've worked together, I can definitely see kindness as a top strength for you. So thank you so much for sharing that. So I hope you all were able to reflect a little bit about what your character strengths are, because again, each of us are equipped with a unique combination of character strengths that makes us who we are. And that's something that we should be really proud of and figure out ways in which we can continue to utilize those strengths on a daily basis, especially when we're experiencing difficulties along in our path. So how can we really utilize and capitalize on the strengths that we have? And then again, seeing that there are strengths. As human beings, we're not perfect. And so knowing that there are traits out there that we want to work on and devising specific plans of how can I continue to build up upon that strength? How can I make that one of my top strengths? And really being intentional and putting effort into that. So now let's continue on to mindset. The way that we think and the mindset we possess are powerful tools in strengthening our resilience. It's insane how impactful our mindset is when it comes to the way that we perceive the world, the way that we perceive the experiences that we go through. So our mindset holds such power. So it's so important that we give it positive power. And what we're going to talk about right now is growth mindset. So our strengths are, and kind of the background behind growth mindset is this understanding that our strengths, our abilities, and our capabilities, they're not fixed. As human beings, we have the potential to grow. We are very dynamic in who we are, who we can become. And that's a beautiful thing. And so that's kind of the idea behind growth mindset. It's this understanding that we are ever evolving, we're ever changing. And if we have certain shortcomings, that doesn't mean it's the end all be all, because we can continue to grow as individuals. And that's really what resilience is all about. We endure hardships, we endure challenges, but even then, there are lessons to be learned in that we identify our strengths and capabilities in those really difficult times, and we keep pushing forward. So that's kind of the idea behind mindset. So it's important that we practice and maintain a mindset, maintain this growth mindset, because again, it does help us overcome the obstacles and challenges we face in life. So now we're going to do this really quick activity where I'm going to present to you all a few statements. And I want you to tell me whether you believe this is an example of a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. So the first statement is, I'm as smart as I'll ever be. Is that an example of a fixed mindset or a growth mindset? I'm as smart as I'll ever be. Exactly, it's a fixed mindset. The next statement is, I learn from my mistakes. Is that a fixed or growth mindset? Exactly, growth. The next statement is, I haven't mastered this skill yet. Fixed or growth? Exactly. I can't do that. I don't know how, and I never will. Fixed or growth? Exactly. It's the fixed. The next statement, wow, that's not going to be easy, but I know I'm capable. Fixed or growth? Perfect. You all are on it. That is a growth mindset. And then the last one is, failure must be avoided at all costs. Fixed or growth? Failure must be avoided at all costs. Exactly. It's a fixed mindset. So I hope you all were kind of able to get a concrete understanding of what fixed versus growth mindset is, and how these really subtle statements that we say throughout the day can really either exemplify a fixed mindset or it exemplifies a growth mindset. With growth mindset, if you look at these statements, it's almost like it's liberating. It's, understanding that I can continue to grow. I am an ever evolving human being. Whereas the fixed mindset, it almost puts you into this little box where you feel kind of stuck, you feel like you're not going to progress forward. And so imagine how impactful that is on on the way that we view ourselves and the way that we view the world. Whereas a growth mindset, it's almost liberating, it's freeing. It's knowing that, okay, even if I'm experiencing X, Y, and Z, I'm having a difficult time right now, I know that I'm going to grow from this. I know that I'm going to learn from this. Even when it talks about failures and mistakes, yes, failures and mistakes are extremely difficult to deal with. All of us experience it throughout our lives. But even then, within those failures and those mistakes, it's just leading us to our growth. It's leading us to our next big success. So fixed versus growth mindset, it can be a really powerful driver in the way that we perceive the world and the experiences that we go through, especially when we're going through difficult times. The next thing we're going to talk about is mental agility. So when I think about mental agility, I think of two things: flexibility in thought and also creativity in thought. And together, flexibility and creativity create this mental agility. And what mental agility is all about, it's our ability to shift our mindset and think about situations from multiple vantage points, not just looking at things in black and white terms, but really being a little bit more creative in the way that we're approaching situations, in the way that we're viewing situations. So the reason why mental agility is so important is because when things don't go as planned, when we encounter challenges and obstacles along the way, is there a way that we can tap into our mental agility to think about unique solutions, to think about things in a different way? And so here's some tips for you all to strengthen your mental agility. The first thing is challenge sameness. So as human beings, we are habitual in nature, which has a lot of benefit to it. But when we are constantly fixed in the same way, we're really not expanding our mindset. We're really not expanding our flexibility and creativity in thought. And so take moments throughout your day, or even just once a day, to stimulate your brain by operating outside of your routine. It can literally be the simplest thing. I'm trying to think, if you're driving to school, taking a different route, just that little tweak really does impact our brain. And it allows our brain to think a little bit more critically, to think a little bit more outside of the box. So take the challenge to challenge sameness just at least once a day, and that really does have a huge impact on our brain and the way that it functions and it works. The next thing is embrace the unknown. Visualize a problem through a storyboard or even a pro and con list. Ask questions to tease out the problem, like, okay, what's missing from this situation? What else could be true? Why does this work? Why doesn't this work? And really treat mistakes and failures as learning lessons instead of just curling up in a ball if something doesn't work. Really challenge what the situation is about. Challenge the way that you're thinking about it. Ask yourself, are there things that I'm missing when I'm looking at this situation? And really just collecting all the data and really analyzing it. And so this kind of goes through to the next tip is think it through. Assess the situation and determine, okay, what is fact versus what is false, or what are some of just my assumptions that maybe aren't grounded in evidence. And look for patterns in the data. Don't just look at the situation, but really dive deep into assessing, what is the situation all about? What is this challenge even trying to teach me? How am I learning and growing from it? And so here's some tips. So these are some tips for mental agility. The next thing when it comes to mindset is all about self-talk and the way that we talk to ourselves. And so when I think of self-talk, I think about, okay, it's that internal monologue that's going on in my head. It's that internal chatter that we have going on pretty much 24/7. We're constantly thinking about things. So when we are talking to ourselves, for some reason, as human beings, we tend to talk to ourselves in a very negative way, where we tend to be our harshest critic rather than our greatest advocate. And so start developing an awareness of how you're speaking to yourself. The first step in self-talk and challenging self-talk is first knowing, what is my self-talk like? Does it tend to be more positive, or does it tend to be more negative? Especially do this assessment when you're experiencing stressful situations, because that's when we tend to be our harshest critic rather than our greatest advocate. So here's an example of how we can start shifting from the negative to the positive. So instead of saying something like, oh, why is this happening to me? Change it up, switch it up to something like, okay, what is this challenge trying to teach me, and how am I going to grow from this experience? Self-talk, because it's something that we have been practicing from the time we could have our own independent thoughts, it does take a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of practicing self-reflection and self-awareness. So just be kind with yourself as you start tweaking the way that you're speaking to yourself from the negative to the positive. But the way that we speak to ourselves holds such power. So again, we need to make sure we're giving it positive power. And my rule of thumb whenever I'm thinking about positive self-talk is speak to yourself the way that you would to a friend or loved one. When your friend or loved one is experiencing a difficult situation, we tend to be very supportive, we tend to be very loving and compassionate. But if we were to experience that same situation for ourselves, we don't tend to extend that same level of kindness and love to ourselves. And so when we start noticing, like, okay, I'm thinking a little bit more negatively right now, I'm really putting myself down, think about what type of advice, what type of support would I give to a friend or loved one? And that's really the same type of love and compassion that we should be showing ourselves. So next we're going to be talking about optimism. So optimism sometimes gets a bad rap because people think that when we talk about optimism, it's life is rainbow and unicorns and we're going to ignore everything that's negative in the world. That's absolutely not the case. When we think about optimism, we are really looking at the whole picture of the situation, of an experience, of the world. We're looking at the whole situation, understanding that there are both negative aspects of the situation and positive aspects of the situation, but we are making the intentional effort to focus on the positive. So when we're talking about optimism, it's really the ability to expect and notice the positive we're not ignoring the negative. We know that it's there, but we are making intentional efforts to focus on the positive. Negative events, when we're thinking about someone who is particularly optimistic, negative events are seen as temporary setbacks or isolated to a particular circumstance that can be overcome by one's effort and one's abilities. And so when we think about optimism, we're also thinking about, okay, I know that in life there's going to be things outside of my control, but what is within my control, and how can I really funnel in my attention, efforts, and resources to things within my control? So again, in life, there's always going to be things outside of our control, but there's also a lot that is within our control. So it's important that we focus our energy, our attention, and resources on things that are within our control. So I have this activity for you all. So I'm going to present to you 2 scenarios. And with this, I want you to think about what is within your control for each scenario. So scenario number 1, your social media feed is being flooded with information that is bringing you down. What is within your control in this situation? So you can either unmute or you can enter your responses into the chat box. So again, your social media feed is being flooded with information that is bringing you down. With this scenario, what is within your control? Let's see, Oscar said who you follow or leaving the media alone to go for a small walk. Absolutely. Yeah, so curating your social media can be a really great thing that you have control over. You have control over what is being presented in social media. And even disconnecting. I love what you said there, Oscar, where it was like taking momentary breaks to disconnect from social media, step away, go on a walk. Jenny said, I can temporarily deactivate my account. Absolutely. If you feel like your social media account is really bringing you down, it's really impacting your mental and emotional well-being, then take the time to deactivate it. It's not deleting your account, it's just allowing you that concrete way to take that break. So thank you all for providing your feedback on that. Scenario number 2, the concepts you're learning in calculus are complex and difficult to understand. In this scenario, what do you have within your control? So, what do you believe is in your control when you are experiencing a really difficult class like calculus? Let's see, find the teacher's office hours. Yep, so reaching out for support. Your understanding of calculus that you can choose to improve. Yeah, so taking that ownership, like I can improve. It's just I need to increase my understanding by studying, by talking to the professor, or the TA, or my other classmates. Going to TA office hours, absolutely. How much you study. Yeah, so the time and effort that you're putting into actually learning that material. Maybe try to think. So trying to figure out ways in which you can improve on your studying. So all of these are really great ways where we don't have control over what the concepts we're learning in calculus are. That's really up to the discretion of the professor and then obviously the textbook. But what we do have control over is how can I figure out how to increase my understanding? How can I tap into my support system, whether that's the professor, the TA, my peers, and also putting in the effort to actually learn the material. So thank you all for participating in that. So here's some tips for building optimism. 1, maximize your successes and minimize your failure, but learn from both. So this is not to say that we're going to completely ignore our failures, because our failures, the way that I view failures, although they're extremely difficult and they're extremely challenging to cope with, failures really are the stepping stones to our greatest successes. When we think about major successes, either in our lives or among famous individuals, they don't just succeed automatically. They've really experienced failures along the way. They've experienced obstacles and roadblocks. And each one of those was the stepping stone or the staircase leading up to their next big success. And we learn from our failures. We learn how to, when we know better. Maya Angelou has this really awesome quote that I love. It's when we learn, or when we know better, we do better. And so that's kind of the way that we can think about successes, failures, shortcomings, etc. The next thing is, like we talked about in our character strengths section, focus on your strengths. Acknowledge that you're not perfect, and that's okay. I always like to say, as human beings, we are perfectly imperfect. And when we are imperfect, that means we are being a perfect human being. So I know that was all kinds of riddle right there. But again, it's showcasing the fact that as human beings, we're not meant to be perfect. And that's okay. That's why we're here on earth. We are not meant to be perfect human beings. The next thing is challenge negative thought patterns. So this goes back to that negative versus positive self-talk. Negative self-talk, we need to just challenge it. We need to say, okay, I know I'm feeling this right now, but is this actually fact? Is this real? And when we're challenging negative thoughts, again, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort and practice. So just be kind and patient with yourself. The next thing is always remember, this is going back to the failure, to my failure spiel, because I think it's so important for us to hear this, is always remembering that virtually any failure can be a learning experience, and it is an important step towards our next success. The last thing is practice positive affirmations. They really do work. It's again, treating yourself the way that you would a friend or loved one. It's amping you up. It's encouraging you. It's supporting you. It's giving you that hope, especially when you're experiencing challenging times. And so one of my favorite positive affirmations is, you are both a masterpiece and a work in progress. It's understanding that I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of where I've been in life, but at the same time, I know that adopting that growth mindset, I'm a work in progress. I'm going to continue growing. I'm going to continue learning, and I'm going to continue becoming a stronger, more resilient person. So this is one of my favorite positive affirmations, but I hope you all can find a positive affirmation that really resonates with you. Okay, so now we're going to talk about sense of purpose. When I think of sense of purpose, it's really either that thing in your life, that person in your life that really sets your soul on fire. It's inspiring. It really just lights up joy deep within you. And research shows that when we cultivate and maintain a sense of purpose, that can lead to the following. It provides a buffer from negative events. It promotes positive coping strategies. It reduces brooding and ruminative thinking, and it supports faster and better recovery. The reason why sense of purpose is so important when we're talking about resilience is because when we have a sense of purpose, when it's something that we're deeply passionate about, that brings us a lot of joy and meaning into our lives, whenever we experience a challenge or hardship, that sense of purpose keeps us going. It keeps us driving and pushing forward because it's that thing where it's like, you know what, this is something I'm so passionate about that even though I face obstacles along the way, I'm still going to keep pushing forward because this is something that is deeply meaningful for me. So in psychology, we tend to talk about it as finding your flow. So right now, I'm going to be presenting to you a few questions that I hope will allow you all to really reflect and think about what is your flow? What is your sense of purpose in life? So I'm going to read these questions for you all and just start thinking about, okay, is there something that comes to mind when I'm hearing these questions? The first question is, can you think of an activity that you can fully immerse yourself in? Remain engaged and feel challenged, but not feel overwhelmed or stressed out? What activity keeps you going where time feels like it's flying by, but in the best way possible? The next question, are there people you spend time with who help you forget your worries, get rid of past baggage and future concerns, and just allows you to be your authentic self? They allow you to be who you truly are. And then the last question, what makes you feel like you're utilizing your skills, but also growing at the same time? So, with that, I invite you all to offer up whether you were able to identify your flow based on these questions that I just presented. And again, you can either unmute and shout out your answer, or you can provide your response in the chat box. So were you able to find your flow or at least think about something that really resonated with you when these questions were being read? Something that really inspires you, that motivates you, that keeps you pushing forward?
I think one of the biggest things I try to find flow in myself personally is
Uh-huh.
like pursuing my passion in like I don't know, playing video games.
Uh-huh.
Very I'm 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 trying to work hard to try to make like a living off of it, whether that's like just within somewhere within that industry.
Right.
Anyway, I think pursuing that passion as a whole can kind
Mhm.
of make me lose track of
Yeah.
time or make me reach like this certain state where if I'm lucky enough, I can forego all the things that I'm thinking and just actively put all of my brain power into
Yeah.
working towards what goal I had set for that day.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Austin. I think that absolutely is your flow. The fact that, it almost sounds like it's a form of de-stress. It sounds like, I'm sure video games, there are times where, you're really skilled at it, but you're continuing to grow your skill set. It seems like time flies by really quickly when you're engaging in that activity. So I definitely think that, and the fact that you want to pursue it as a potential career is, I think, indicative of the fact that you have found your flow, which is absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Let's see. I think so. Bruce said photography, it makes you use different way. Exactly. It helps you think about situations in different ways. when you're engaging in photography, you're looking at things from different vantage points. And I think that kind of speaks about like that mental agility almost, where it's like, one person can see it one way, but when you're taking a picture of it, there's so many different angles. And I think that is a really great way where you have tapped into your flow because it's something you're obviously passionate about. But I also think it's practicing your mental agility, which I think is really awesome. So thank you for sharing that, Bruce. Okay, so now we're going to transition into social support. As human beings, we are social creatures by nature. Even if you identify as an introvert, that human connection is still such an important piece of who we are as human beings. And when we're experiencing hardships or challenges, or even when we're not, tap into those social support systems, really seek out support, seek out comfort, seek out partnership, because it's so important for several reasons. So social support has been shown to reduce emotional distress, increase the ability to cope with stressful situations, improve mental and physical outcomes, and encourage the sustainment of healthy behaviors. So when we're talking about social support, not only is it important that we tap into our social support system, especially when we are experiencing feelings of feeling overwhelmed, or if we're feeling really anxious, but also making sure that we strengthen our social support system by being there for other people. And, it's not always about tapping into our social support system. It's also about being there when other people need you. And both of those together, that reciprocal relationship, that really strengthens our social support system. So what do you think are some other ways, knowing that social support networks are so important? The question that I have for you all is, what are some ways that we can build and maintain social support networks? What are some ways that you think are great ways to build and maintain social support networks, knowing how important our social networks are for our health and well-being?
Well, I think for social support, I think like to talk with the friends through like a FaceTime or something is like maybe helpful. As like your tape said, is like sometimes we got like with like this pandemic we can't talk. So I think like FaceTime is like a way to keep like the social connection with other friend, and especially with like how now the internet's all over the world, we can connect with anybody like in the world anytime, I guess.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you made a great point there. It's about being very intentional and putting the effort into actually building and maintaining those social support networks. Because sometimes what happens is we tend to wait for other people to reach out for us, but really taking the effort to coordinate that FaceTime, reach out to a friend, bring people together. I think that's really important when we're talking about ways in which we can build and maintain our social support networks. So then the last thing we're going to talk about is holistic self-care. So practicing holistic self-care is really crucial for preparing our bodies, minds, and hearts for the inevitable challenges that await us. And again, resilience is all about being built upon a foundation of hardships and challenges. So it's so important that we prioritize our health and well-being in a holistic way so that we can be ready to take on the challenges that are just up ahead or that we're currently experiencing. So when I think about holistic self-care, I think about showing love and extending a little extra kindness to all of the parts that really makes us who we are. And so I've divided ourselves up into 4 categories. I'm going to be talking about our physical well-being, our emotional well-being, our social well-being, and then lastly, our spiritual well-being. There's a lot of other elements that can make us who we are, but these are the 4 that I'll be talking about right now. So the first thing, when we're talking about our showing up for ourselves and practicing self-care when it comes to our physical selves, It's all about getting enough rest. So that 7 to 9 hours of sleep each night, moving our bodies in ways that feel right for us, that is fun and engaging, and that we can be consistent on. Nourishing our bodies with foods that not only it needs, but also what it wants. I think it's so important that, if you're having a craving for a donut or ice cream, to indulge just in a moderate way. Because I think that's good for our emotional well-being as well, to nourish our body not only with foods that it needs, like fruits, vegetables, protein, carbs, and fats, but also in foods that it wants to have. The next thing is reduce alcohol and caffeine consumption. Be sure to take those slow, steady, deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth to get you through to a relaxed state. And then lastly, balance work, play, and rest. Even in a remote setting, it is so easy for us to be on the go, 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 jumping from work to school to research labs. And so it's so important that we ensure that we're making time for not only work, but also play and also rest. The next thing is emotional well-being. When we're talking about ways in which we can practice emotional self-care, it's all about discovering healthy ways to cope with stress. Get help early on if you're feeling overwhelmed. If you're not at a point where you're feeling overwhelmed, but you're anticipating that you're almost going to get there, tap into your social support systems. The next thing is use relaxation skills that work best for you. Next thing, listen to music that soothes you. And then lastly, recognize that humor can be a really useful respite when we're going through really challenging times, or even when we're not and we are just showing up for our emotional selves. The beauty of humor, I think it's a really underrated form of healthy coping, is the fact that when we laugh, when we smile, we're actually releasing a lot of feel-good hormones. And that is really great for not only our mental health, but our physical health as well. And so one of the ways that we can cope, a healthy way of coping, is through belly breaths. So it is all about taking slow and steady breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth, and even holding that breath just for a moment, just allowing it to really stay deep within your body, and then exhaling to the point where you feel like you've exhausted all of the air out of your lungs. So together, let's see, yeah, we have enough time. So together we're gonna do this 4-7-8 breathing technique. So I invite you all to just get really comfortable where you're seated, or if you're lying down, just get really comfortable and gently close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so. Next, place one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly. And with that, take a slow and deep breath in through your nose, and hold that breath as you silently count to 7. So take a slow and deep breath in, counting to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold that breath as you silently count to 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And exhale all of that air completely out of your lungs as you count to 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is an exercise, I kind of messed it up in the beginning, but basically the way that this exercise works is taking a slow and deep breath in through your nose as you silently count to 4, holding that breath as you silently count to 7, and then exhaling as you silently count to 8. And you can repeat this exercise 3 to 7 times until you feel like you're at a more calm and relaxed state. And just take note of, how do you feel at the end of that exercise? So this is a really quick and easy breathing exercise that you all can do that really taps into that belly breathing technique of relaxation. So I apologize for messing that one up in the beginning. The next form of self-care is going to focus on social self-care. The first way that we can show up for ourselves in a social way is, one, being aware of whether we're withdrawing socially and isolating socially. This tends to happen when we're experiencing a lot of challenges, a lot of stressors in our lives. One of the unhealthy ways of coping is withdrawing and isolating ourselves from other people. And so this is completely separate from what I like to call peaceful solitude. So I think it's really important for our own health and well-being to have moments where we are just by ourselves, where we can reflect and, just be alone in the present moment. but it's different than withdrawing and isolating from ourselves in an intentional way for extended periods of time. So just being aware of that. The next thing is get nurturance and care from loved ones. Use your friends and family and community for support, but again, be supportive of other people. Seek out other activities for seek out others for social activities. Obviously, in this time of a global pandemic, it's important that we just practice those safety precautions when we are engaging with other people. And then the last thing is establish healthy boundaries. Take note of when others are demanding too much of your time or your energy. It feels like they are kind of they're kind of just taking all that you have. And so really assessing those types of relationships. And when I'm thinking relationships, it's not just romantic partners, it's any relationship that you have, whether it's a friendship with, or a relationship you have with a colleague or peer, and establishing those healthy boundaries, knowing what you want out of that relationship and what you don't want out of the relationship, and making sure you're having that open communication and dialogue. And then lastly is all about spiritual self-care. So oftentimes there's this misconception that when we're talking about spirituality, that it's completely, it is entirely related to religion. And while religion is directly within our spiritual well-being, that is not the end all be all. Spiritual well-being is all about feeling inspired. It's almost going back to that sense of purpose and finding your flow. It's those things that really resonate with you, that make you feel like your heart is full, that uplifts you. So for example, one of my favorite authors and poets is Maya Angelou. And so when I read her work, I'm so inspired. And so reading inspirational works, listening to music that is really inspirational to you, is a great way to show love to our spiritual well-being. The next thing, cultivate and express an attitude of gratitude. Meditate and engage in prayer if feels right for you. Connecting with nature, finding creative ways to express yourself, and joining communities with shared values and missions, and volunteering for causes that are deeply meaningful to you. So all of these are ways in which you can take care of your spiritual self. So those were all of the different strategies that I have for you when it comes to strengthening your resilience. So I hope that you were able to take some of these bits of pieces of knowledge and figure out ways in which you can start incorporating those into your lives. And the last thing I'm going to end with is there are a bunch of resources here on campus that can help you build up your resilience, that can help you build community, that allows you to be as successful as possible while you're a student here at UC San Diego. So the first department that I'll mention is obviously my home department, Health Promotion Services, and we also oversee the Zone, which is our student lounge for health and well-being. So please be sure to check out our website. It's healthpromotionservices.ucsd.edu. And there's a wide range of resources that are available to you that are also free of charge. So for example, health coaching is our newest service that we provide students. And so you can either meet with myself or one of the other health educators, and we can help guide you along in your health and well-being goals. I'm also going to put in a plug for our Live Well, Be Well podcast. This is a podcast that I oversee, and we discuss all topics related to health and wellness, from sex and relationships, to alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, to stress management and resilience, of course, and a whole other range of topics that we cover. So please be sure to check that out. It is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, as well as Google Podcasts. Some other resources available to you all: counseling and psychological services, student health services. There are 6 resource centers on campus to help you build up your community. There's a Center for Student Involvement, Oasis, Basic Needs, and Recreation. So I hope you all, and this is not the exhaustive list of resources on campus, these are just a few. So please be sure to check out what are the resources on campus that are available to me that will help me along in my health and well-being journey. So I hope you all were able to get some useful information out of this. I had the absolute pleasure of speaking with you all today and working with you all. And I wish you all the best of luck in in this really chaotic and unusual time of great uncertainty, but just always remember how strong you are, how resilient you are, and how much you can learn and grow from the experiences that you all have gone through today as well as in the past year. So thank you all so much for attending. I'm going to put up a poll right now. This allows me to see areas in which I can improve upon for this workshop specifically. So I greatly appreciate it if you all can contribute.
Yes, thank you, Renee. And I want to do one update is at our today's event, we know to build like social support is really important. So the Trade and Transfer Hub is here. If you have any question, feel free to contact with either peer coach. We're here to help you, to support you, and to even you can just chat with us. We know it's like this Zoom and all the pandemic, we have like less social connection. So we are here to support you.
Thank you all. I hope you all have a great night.